Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. He's giving me a chance to rest. Xu Shenhua learned another move, and his heart slightly trembled. He brought me to the manufacturing factory to make me exhaust my brain power and get the upper hand. Now he's giving me the chance to rest, which shows that he doesn't care if my brain power is exhausted or not, since from the start he was the one standing higher. I exhausted my brain power moments ago, and now he is putting pressure on the mental level. He's making me feel like I'm inferior to him. Even though Xu Shenhua understood Qin Mu's way of thinking, he had already sunk into the trap and couldn't break free. When he met with Qin Mu and drank wine with him in Rain Listening Pavilion, the battle had already begun. From then on, he had fallen into Qin Mu's tempo, and the other's plan had worked without a hitch. If the two of them made a move, one could imagine how overbearing and unrestrained Qin Mu's attack would be. Overlord body is indeed extraordinary. Xu Shenhua composed himself, his gaze flickering. However, I'm also an Overlord body. As a fellow Overlord body, I won't be weaker than him. Their footsteps gradually became matched, but one walked first while the other second. Whenever Qin Mu took a step forward, Xu Shenhua would do so as well. He was like a shadow, giving people a weird feeling. The four girls following after them saw this sight. The two big boys were walking one after another, with the one in front revealing the back of his heart to the one in the back, yet the one there following step for step, but not taking the chance to land a fatal blow. Instead, he looked like he had been roped in and was walking forward unwillingly. Young master is in a disadvantageous position. The hearts of Yu Liu and Jing Yang trembled slightly. It was their first time seeing Xu Shenhua in a disadvantageous position before the fight had even started. In high heavens, Xu Shenhua was beyond outstanding and had astonished all the gods there. He was praised as the person with the highest aptitude in 500 years. And when Xu Shenhua came to the mortal world, he was worthy of his reputation. Pan Gongso of Roland's Golden Palace had avoided the battle, Great Thunderclap Monastery didn't want to fight, Daozi Lin Xian had been challenged and defeated along with the experts of Little Jade Capital, while the Hall of Three Eons and Hall of Five Chiefs tests were passed successfully. Yet right then, Xu Shenhua had met the most terrifying opponent. Qin Mu brought Xu Shenhua for 100 miles, but he was also slightly shocked. Until then, Xu Shenhua's footsteps were still not in order, and there were no flaws in his movements. This was something that was nearly impossible. Even Pan Gongso, that old monster which had lived for 10,000 years, couldn't remain walking this steadily. Pan Gongso was skilled in the techniques and divine arts of Great Thunderclap Monastery, Dao Sect, Little Jade Capital, and Heavenly Devil Cult. But if he was suppressed by Qin Mu and got led by him, he would start to wobble when, after 10 miles, changing his body movement to ensure he wouldn't reveal any flaw. When it would come to 20 miles, Pan Gongso would start to reveal his flaws and find it hard to change. When it would come to 21 miles, Pan Gongso would attack Qin Mu first, trying to take the key moment or else he would definitely die. If Pan Gongso continued to follow Qin Mu's footsteps and did not attack, he would die at 24 miles. He would definitely be killed by Qin Mu in one strike. Yet Xu Shenhua could always match Qin Mu's footsteps, and even if he was led, his footsteps and body movements did not falter, thus he was invulnerable. From Mud River to over 100 miles away, he didn't reveal any flaws. Wang Muren said his techniques and divine arts are very strange, becoming stronger when meeting stronger opponents. The stronger the opponent is, the faster they would lose at his hands. His divine arts are all adapted on the spot and created in battle. This kind of technique is definitely extremely high level. It must have surpassed technique and entered straight into the level of skill upon being mastered. Qin Mu became more and more excited. He didn't turn back, but instead continued to walk forward at an increasing speed. Xu Shenhua's technique was very mystical, allowing him to surpass technique and go straight into the level of creating divine arts. Qin Mu wanted to test the limits of that techniques and see how it fared when compared to Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. His footsteps became faster and faster while his aura became stronger and stronger. He flew forward as fast as lightning, but his footsteps were still as calm as before. There was no sense of hurry. Xu Shenghua followed after, and his footsteps were still steady, without any sign of a mistake. Their speed became faster and faster. Suddenly, Xu Shenghua's face turned pale and his complexion slowly began to whiten. He was brought by Qin Mu to run another 100 miles, and he couldn't endure it any longer. He vomited a mouth of fresh blood. Qin Mu continued to move forward, and Xu Shenghua continued to run with him while puking another mouthful of blood. But even if he did so, there were still no flaws in his movements. However, if he continued to vomit blood like this, he would use up all of it and die. From the beginning to the end, Qin Mu had never made a move on him. He was the one who had injured himself. When Qin Mu walked, their auras, body techniques, and divine arts were actually in battle. Even though it looked like there was no danger, the battle had already started and there was no room for mistakes. Xu Shenghua's technique and divine arts relied on adapting on the spot and creation, thus they had an extremely high requirement for mental strength. He had exhausted his mind in the manufacturing factory, and even though Qin Mu had given him time to rest, the brainpower that was exhausted couldn't be replenished that easily. From the moment he vomited blood from exhaustion, the strain on his brain would only grow larger as he continued. There was no need for Qin Mu to make his move, for he would push himself to being exhausted to death. If he continued walking, his brain would definitely tire itself out. Xu Shenghua's black strands of hair began to turn whitish-gray. As he coughed blood, he followed in Qin Mu's footstep. The exhaustion of his brain power had already affected his body. If nothing changed, he would soon exhaust himself to death. Suddenly, Qin Mu stopped and smiled. If I kill you like this, you will definitely not be willing to accept it, and I won't feel the pleasure of the battle as well. Brother Xu, nurse your injuries and replenish your vital qi. We shall determine our life and death next time. Xu Shenghua stopped in his footsteps and opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but he suddenly collapsed on the ground and fainted. Truly a respectable and terrifying opponent, praised Qin Mu. He left Xu Shenghua who had fainted there and turned to leave. Blood leaked out from the corner of Qin Mu's mouth, but he immediately swallowed what had risen up his throat. He had almost exhausted Xu Shenghua to death, but he had almost not been able to endure it himself as well. However, the people of the village had said that one can lose a battle, but not their bearing. Xu Shenghua gradually awakened and noticed that he was lying on the sickbed. There was a warm, wet towel on his forehead, which felt like splitting. There seemed to be millions and millions of voices screaming in his mind, ringing beside his ears. His head was on the verge of exploding, the splitting pain making him want for nothing more than to chop his head off and kick it as far away as possible. He couldn't resist groaning, and Jing Yang's voice came from outside, "Young master is awake." She hurried over, bringing with her a medicinal smell. She looked at him in surprise and delight. "I've lost." Xu Shenghua had a stupefied expression. Jing Yang immediately said, "Young master has slept for a very long time, I'm brewing some medicine for you." "How long have I been asleep? Where is this place?" Xu Shenghua asked with a muddled head as the sound of his heart beating boomed in his mind. "We are still at the capital, and young master has slept for over 2 days." Jing Yang helped him up to lean against the bed. She said, "Sister Yu Liu heard that there was a divine physician in Eternal Peace Capital whose abilities are remarkable, so she went out in a hurry to invite him." Xu Shenghua wanted to raise his hand, but he suddenly groaned. It was as if his head got split by a knife. "It's best for young master to not move or have any thoughts," Jing Yang immediately said. Young master got led by bad guy Qin and followed him unwillingly. He attacked and you defended, which had placed you in a disadvantageous situation. In addition to the technique, you needed divine arts to continuously break through his attack, so you exhausted too much brain power. If you start thinking, you will be using your mind, and since young master's mind is injured, it's best for you to rest now. Wait for the divine physician to come. Xu Shenghua closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He didn't move anymore as well. He remembered the situation back then. Qin Mu had first used Sunshot Divine Cannon to exhaust a portion of his brain power, and after he had seen through that plot, the other pressured him mentally and led him along at his tempo. When the two of them were walking, they were competing with their aura. Qin Mu held the upper hand to attack. When he released his murderous intent, he immediately felt that he could get attacked, thus he immediately changed his body movements and the flow of his vital qi, taking the corresponding defensive position. His technique was extremely marvelous and could create divine arts to counter the opponent's attacks. However, since Qin Mu didn't attack, Xu Shenghua could only create and not unleash the divine arts. And just like that, Qin Mu attacked non-stop with his aura, while Xu Shenghua had to defend non-stop. In just a short distance of 200 miles, he exhausted all his brain power and his mind couldn't endure it any longer. His body also couldn't take it anymore, which caused him to vomit blood continuously. His consciousness then crumbled, and he fainted on the spot. Back then, Qin Mu had stopped in his footsteps, but if the other had continued on, he would have been dragged forward until he vomited all the blood, all the way until his brain became tired itself to death. He would have only stopped when he became a corpse. A crushing defeat. It was the first time Xu Shenghua had tasted such a defeat, and he was actually slightly bitter in his heart. It was his first time feeling such an emotion. Yu Liu's voice came from outside. "Yangzi, come out for a moment." Jing Yang immediately went out and said, "Young master is awake but he can't move. Have you invited the divine physician?" "I've invited, it's just that." Jing Yang walked out and an astonished cry could be heard outside. "Why is it you?" "I was even more astonished than you, however, I pleaded him for a while until he was willing to come," Yu Liu said with a bitter smile. Xu Shenghua opened his eyes and said weakly, "Invite the divine physician in." The curtain was parted and Qin Mu walked in with a smile. "Brother Xu." Xu Shenghua looked at him and was stunned. His head started to ache severely, and Qin Mu immediately went forward. He took out a few spirit Buddha pills for him to consume and said with a smile, "It's best if your mind doesn't fluctuate too much. I've experienced a situation like yours before as well. My body was exhausted by cultivating a technique, to the point I almost died. Your symptoms are from overexertion of your mind and brain power beyond the limits of your body. Your injuries are actually not severe and you can recover in a month or two by nursing it slowly. However, with me treating you, you'll be fine in half a day." Xu Shenghua consumed spirit Buddha pills and felt much more comfortable. His head was still aching, but it wasn't as severe as before. He could slowly control his arms and legs, and his body also seemed to belong to him once more. "You're also a divine physician," he croaked. "I can't be considered a divine physician. My attainments in the art of healing are at most number 2. However, you can't find anyone better than me in the art of healing in Eternal Peace Empire." Qin Mu diagnosed his condition for a moment and wrote down a prescription for Yu Liu to grab some herbs. He smiled and said, "With my spirit herbs nursing you, the deficiency in your body will recover in 2-3 days. Victory and defeat are commonplace in military operations, and it's also common for us cultivators, don't put it to heart." Xu Shenghua looked at him in the face and suddenly sighed. "There are some places in which I'm really inferior to you. You schemed to defeat me, but I can't bear any hatred for you. I have come under the orders of my master to kill you and only wanted to return to high heavens after accomplishing my mission. Never would have I expected to treat you as a friend." Qin Mu sighed. "Overlord bodies are hard to find. However, you and I can only be enemies, it's impossible for us to be friends." Both of them fell silent. Not long later, Yu Liu came back with the medicine and Qin Mu refined the spirit pills for Xu Shenghua to consume. The young man walked by the bed unsteadily, his whole body trembling. He frowned and said, "I can clearly feel that the injuries are recovering, but why can't I stand steadily? My hand is still shaking." Qin Mu pondered it for a moment, then his eyes lighted up. He smiled. "I know what illness you're suffering. Follow me." When he said that, he walked outside. Xu Shenghua wanted to follow him, but his body was still shaking. His legs wobbled, so Yu Liu and Jing Yang had to help him out of the room. Since Xu Shenghua was a disciple of high heavens, the place he stayed at naturally couldn't be too shabby. An inn would have been too noisy, so they rented out a house that was quite tranquil. Qin Mu brought him to the streets and looked around with bright eyes. He smiled when he saw for what he was looking. The medicine to cure your illness is here. Xu Shenghua was stunned, and so were the two girls beside him. Qin Mu sat down in front of a stall and said to the stall owner, 10 bowls of noodles, extra large bowls. Don't add chili and oil in the first bowl, just a bit of salt is enough. That's right, when you need the noodles, add 1 more egg. What are you standing there in a daze for? Come and take a seat. Yu Liu and Jing Yang frowned. They looked at the old noodle stall which was placed out on the street. With people walking to and fro, dust couldn't be prevented. The people sitting there to eat were all burly men. One look at them was enough to know that they were country folk who did bitter work. When had the group from high heavens eaten dinner like that, at a noodle stall? They would usually find too dirty to even think about it. One needed to know that high heavens was a sacred ground of gods that were high at the top, so what they ate and drank were all rare delicacies in the mortal world. They were also unimaginably clean and untainted by even a speck of dust. The boss of the noodle stall was also a burly man. He pulled noodles with both his hands and smacked them loudly. It was obvious that they weren't clean. Yet Xu Shenghua sat down while gasping for breath. Yu Liu and Jing Yang could only sit down next to him and use a towel to wipe the oil stain on the table. They frowned when they couldn't do it. They couldn't sit still, feeling that even the stool under their butts was also greasy. However, Xu Shenghua was calm and sat calmly while waiting for his noodles. The first bowl of noodles was served, and it was clear soup egg noodles in a bowl as big as a face-washing basin. The noodles were pulled with equal thickness and were like white jade threads placed in the middle of the soup. The top was garnished with chopped onions. Xu Shenghua looked at the noodles and didn't know how to eat such a thing. Qin Mu passed a pair of chopsticks to him, but Xu Shenghua was still at a loss. He held the chopsticks and jabbed into the bowl, but he couldn't pick up any noodles. He had never used chopsticks in high heavens before, since all he ate were spirit pills, and all he drank was dew. He had never eaten the food of the mortal world before. Xu Shenghua looked at the people eating noodles and gradually learned how to use a pair of chopsticks. Eat slowly, Qin Mu said while beaming at him. You have been starving for a few days, so it is easy to damage your stomach if you eat too fast. Your illness is starvation, and because your brain was overly exhausted, the energy in your body had been redirected to your brain. When you fainted, you had used up all your energy, but then still continued to starve for 2 more days. So it would only be weird if you weren't feeble. Drink some soup first, it will help with digestion. Xu Shenghua gulped down the soup while listening to his words. Qin Mu, Yu Liu, and Jing Yang's noodles were also served. The two girls were quite reserved, but Qin Mu didn't care and just poured lots of chili oil in his bowl, eating to his heart's content. Xu Shenghua finished a bowl of noodles first and looked at them impatiently. Qin Mu immediately said, digest it first, there will be a second bowl later. Xu Shenghua sat there obediently. When Qin Mu finished, there were already 3 more bowls of noodles on the table. Qin Mu then nodded and smiled. Brother Xu, you can begin. Xu Shenghua immediately started eating. Having learned from Qin Mu, he poured a layer of chili oil on top of the bowl. Instantly, his body started steaming with hot vapor. When Yu Liu and Jing Yang finished eating the noodles in front of them, Xu Shenghua had finished his 7th bowl and slumped down in his seat, feeling very comfortable. Yu Li and Jing Yang looked at each other in dismay. Young Master Xu had never been so lacking in manners. He was actually slumping. This human emperor is truly devilish. If young master interacts with him a few more times, you will be able to smell the stink. The two girls looked at each other and felt uneasy in their hearts. Qin Mu rose and asked, does Brother Xu have any great abundance coins? In a daze, Xu Shenghua shook his head. Yu Liu is usually the one in charge of finances. Yu Liu revealed a troubled expression and said softly, young master, we have spent all our money buying herbs just now. I even used my own hairpin to mortgage. Only then did I manage to get all the herbs. Qin Mu took out a great abundance coin and went forward to pay the bill. He shook his head and said, I really don't know how the 3 of you get by. I'll treat this meal. Brother Shu, get up, now that you've eaten so much, it's best to take a stroll. Xu Shenhua got up. Yu Liu and Jing Yang immediately went forward to support him, but Xu Shenhua shook his head and said, "There's no need to support me. I was indeed suffering from starvation, but I'm much better now. I can walk by myself." The four of them took a casual stroll at a leisurely pace. Yu Liu couldn't help worrying. Is this human emperor going to stroll young master to death again? When they came to the outskirts of the capital, Qin Mu brought them in the direction of the manufacturing factory. Xu Shenghua's gaze flickered, and he asked, "Why did Brother Qin bring me to this place again?" Qin Mu smiled and said, "Don't be mistaken. When you were unconscious these 2 days, the base of Sunshot Divine Cannon had been done, and we are starting to assemble it. I need to install the components of the base so that nothing goes wrong." "That's right, when will you give me the money for treating you? My treatments are very expensive." Xu Shenghua groaned. "No money. In that case, Brother Shu." Qin Mu's eyes lit up as he came forward and said mysteriously, "Have you heard of Heavenly Saint cult?" Xu Shenhua was bewildered and said, "Other than having the identity of the human emperor, you are also the cult master of Heavenly Devil cult, so I have naturally heard of it before." "Why did Brother Qin ask about that?" Qin Mu beamed at him. "If Brother Shu is willing to join our Heavenly Saint cult, you won't have to pay me back. Even though I'm the human emperor, I'm also the Heavenly Saint cult master. Hall of Human Emperors may have a deep grudge with High Heavens, but Heavenly Saint cult doesn't, right? If Brother Shu joins Heavenly Saint cult, it would be a win-win situation." Yu Liu and Jing Yang had weird expressions. The actions of this human emperor were truly preposterous and unconstrained. High Heavens and Hall of Human Emperors were sworn enemies, yet he still invited his sworn enemy to join Heavenly Saint cult. This human emperor can't really think that 9 bowls of noodles and a treatment could make young Master Shu join his Heavenly Saint cult, right? Should I say that he's innocent or scheming? Jing Yang thought to herself. Xu Shenhua was silent for a moment before saying, "Brother Qin, don't joke around. Don't worry, I'll pay you back as soon as possible." Qin Mu hadn't pinned his hopes on him agreeing to join Heavenly Saint cult. Even though Heavenly Saint cult wasn't sworn enemies with High Heavens, Saint Woodcutter of Heavenly Saint cult and first-generation Human Emperor of Hall of Human Emperors were both from Founding Emperor era. They had the same goal, just that their methods were different. Hall of Human Emperors relied on fighting to achieve their goal, while Heavenly Saint cult relied on the philosophy of the common people to push the world to improve to reach their goal. The ending point for both of the sacred grounds was to overthrow the rule of gods and build the world in their hearts. And regarding this point, their philosophy was naturally conflicting with High Heavens. Numerous divine arts practitioners flooded out from the manufacturing factory. They executed their vital qi and lifted up huge components. With them floating in the air, Qin Mu walked around in the sky to adjust their positions. Even though it was only the base of Sunshot Divine Cannon, the formation markings were extremely complicated. Especially the 56 pill furnaces that Qin Mu had personally designed. Every one of them was huge and hard to forge it as a whole. They required the assembly of more than 100 components, and the connection of the formation markings couldn't have any mistakes. Qin Mu used tenon structure, so there was no need for any hammering when piecing them together. As long as they were locked together, they would become incomparably sturdy and be able to withstand an extremely huge impact. Furthermore, even if Sunshot Divine Cannon was damaged by the opponent and a portion of it stopped working, it could be removed and quickly replaced by new, working parts. After the replacement, the Divine Cannon could then be used once again without any decrease in power. When connecting the base of the Divine Cannon, numerous officials gathered outside the manufacturing factory. Emperor Yangfeng had also come out. It was obvious that he placed a lot of importance on the Divine Cannon. Supervisor Qin's tenon structure could also be used for spirit weapons and flying ships on the battlefield. Emperor Yangfeng was full of praises when he spoke to the government minister of Ministry of Works. "I feel that we can promote this to the entire army. If the flying swords and flying ships were all made using tenon structure, we could reduce the losses during wartime drastically." The government minister of Ministry of Works nodded. "However, it would be difficult to forge them. With the new manufacturing factory that Supervisor Qin designed, forging each and every component of a flying sword wouldn't be that difficult. Emperor Yangfeng pondered over it for a moment more, then added, if we had all the manufacturing factories produce a large number of components to replace the damaged parts of the spirit weapons, flying ships, and cloud chariots, then even with a large-scale war, the losses wouldn't be too high. Your Ministry of Works should go and learn so you can popularize this kind of manufacturing factory. Just as he was saying that, Qin Mu gave the order to piece everything together. The hundreds of divine arts practitioners connected the center components, and a circular plate with an area of 6 Rs was formed. After that, Chancellor Ba Shan, who had returned from the front lines in the north, went to the bottom. With his both hands raised up, he used his dense magic power to lift up the huge and thick circular plate. Several hundred divine arts practitioners walked out of the manufacturing factory again. Beside them, a person was continuously reading out numbers. With every number he read, a divine arts practitioner would come forward and add a component to the circulate plate. The more components were added, the bigger and thicker the circular base became. When nearly 10,000 components were attached, the legs of Chancellor Ba Shan, this strong man, were starting to tremble. The weight on him made it hard for him to even straighten his waist. Jiu Linwan went forward, and the two of them raised this circular plate with their dense magic power. The circular plate by then had the area of 27 hectares. When the number read reached 27,000, the circular plate that had an area of 66 hectares was finally formed. Below it was 4 strong practitioners of the cult master level using magic power to lift the base of the divine cannon in the sky. On the circular plate, Qin Mu and numerous officials of Ministry of Works moved around rapidly to check on the runes of every meeting point between the components. When they were sure there were no problems, Qin Mu gave an order, and huge beasts pulled over large carts. The numerous apothecaries on the carts immediately jumped down and moved medicinal stones onto the circular base. Start the furnace, Qin Mu ordered. Start the furnace. 56 peel furnaces were started as medicinal stones were poured into them. Each and every apothecary executed their vital qi to ignite them, and flames instantly blazed to life. The flames turned from red to white before changing to green, and then to blue. This incomparably terrifying energy rapidly coursed through the formation markings and runes on the circular plate, activating the full formation. Below the circular plate, the 4 strong practitioners of the cult master level immediately felt a decrease in pressure. The huge cannon battery actually didn't need them to lift it up anymore, it could float by itself. The officials praised such a sight. Supernaturally fine craft, truly a supernaturally fine craft. Emperor Yanfeng's expression wasn't too good. Qin Mu mainly wanted to piece the base of the divine cannon and test the operation of the pill furnaces and formation. However, just testing the pill furnace required the same amount of medicinal stones as medium-scale war. It's not his money that's being spent. Emperor Yangfeng felt a pain in his heart. Qin Mu finished the examination and jumped down from the base. He then said in a loud voice, extinguish the furnaces and lower the base. The pill furnaces gradually extinguished, and the huge base that was floating in the sky also slowly landed on the ground. Even so, wind was raised and blew past everyone in gales. Their clothes fluttered, and their faces suffered from the air pressure. The air currents quelled. Qin Mu said loudly, apothecaries, prepare the medicinal stones. Once the cannon's frame and the light-gathering forks are done, we'll activate the pill furnaces again. The apothecaries accepted the order. Emperor Yanfeng's face paled, and he ordered someone to invite Qin Mu over. He asked him with a pleasant face, Supervisor Qin, why do you still need to activate the pill furnaces? Your Majesty, there are too many components in Sunshot Divine Cannon, so it's hard to prevent mistakes. Thus after the cannon's frame and light-gathering forks are done, I will need to activate it again to check if anything had gone wrong. Emperor Yangfeng beamed at him and said, how many more times do you need to activate it? If there's no mistake, 2-3 times will be enough. Qin Mu calculated it for a moment and said, if there's something wrong, we will need to check where the problem is, and in that case, I can't say how many times we will have to activate it. Especially at the position of the Divine Eye, which uses tenon structure and 3-dimensional pinion suspension structure. This leads to it being extremely complicated, so the chances of making a mistake are much higher. Don't worry, Your Majesty, with so many algebra experts here, we will definitely find the mistake in the shortest amount of time. I will try to control the number of activations to not go over 10 to not spend too much money. Your Majesty, the next time the furnace will be started shall be half a month later, may Your Majesty. In that case, that's good, I won't be coming, so you shall settle everything yourself. Government Minister, escort me back to the palace. Qin Mu saw the emperor off as he got escorted back by a few officials while shaking. He was bewildered in his heart. Could the emperor have not healed yet? That's not right, little Poison King, and I had clearly cured him. Xu Shenghua looked at the huge circular plate with a grim face. Qin Mu walked over to him with a smile and asked, Brother Xu, what do you think about this cannon battery? It's the work of gods, a supernaturally fine craft. Xu Shenghua took a glance at him and said, Brother Qin spends all his energy on things like this, so I think that he will soon be defeated by me. You're a divine physician and also a heavenly worker at the same time, which makes it impossible for you to place all your energy on cultivation. As time goes by, your cultivation will be surpassed by mine and you'll suffer a crushing defeat. Brother Xu knows how to use mind tactics. Qin Mu smiled and said, You don't want me to forge this divine cannon and also want to beat down on my confidence. However, to me, no matter if it's the art of healing or the heavenly works, they are both a kind of cultivation where I can apply my abilities. Actually, if I wanted to defeat you, it would be very simple for me to poison you or even forge a powerful weapon to blow you into smithereens, for these are also my abilities. Xu Shenghua's heart sunk, and he said, Those aren't true means. Qin Mu laughed loudly and patted his shoulder. We as the Overlord bodies. Whatever we learn, we can't just focus on cultivation. The next time you challenge me, will you know if I decide to beat you with bare hands, poison you, or smash you with treasures? The fee for my treatment is 1,000 great abundance coins, so pay them to me as soon as possible and don't owe me any favors. After that, you can challenge me again. I'll wait for you. Xu Shenghua was stunned. Suddenly, the young girl came skipping over with 3 white tails swaying behind her. She quickly wrote down a certificate of debt before saying with a loud and crisp voice, Young Master Xu, please sign. Xu Shenghua signed in a daze, and the girl put away that certificate of debt with utmost care before following Qin Mu to leave. I've come down from high heavens, and not only did I not kill the human emperor, I even got indebted to him, owing him 1,000 great abundance coins. Xu Shenghua shook his head and sighed ruefully in his heart. How am I supposed to return like this? Yu Liu, Jing Yang, how can I earn money? Yu Liu and Jing Yang were also unable to find a solution. The fastest way to earn money was to sell treasures, and they had brought quite a number of them from high heavens, so they were fine with selling a few pieces. However, when Xu Shenghua had fallen ill, they had sold all they could sell. Only the jade vase and peeper were left. These two were Star Sovereign Qiao's treasures, so they absolutely couldn't sell them. I'm proficient in music, can that be exchanged for money? Asked Xu Shenghua. Young Master wants to sell his singing service. Jing Yang cried out. How is this feasible? Besides, singing doesn't make much. I also have some knowledge on forging spirit weapons. Maybe I can forge a few spirit weapons to exchange for money, Xu Shenghua muttered. Young Master is planning to be a blacksmith. Xu Shenghua smiled and said, I'm an overlord body, it's fine if I don't learn, but if I learn, I'll definitely be the best. Don't worry, even as a blacksmith, I'll definitely be the best. I'll definitely not be any inferior to that human Emperor Qin, that overlord body. Jing Yang and Yu Liu revealed worried expressions when they looked at one another. They thought to themselves, young Master Xu probably won't be going to high heavens anymore. His heart is no longer the one he had when he was in high heavens. When Qin Mu met Xu Shenghua again a month later, it was in a smithy. The most outstanding disciple of high heavens no longer had the flawless and untainted image like in the past. He was currently wielding a huge hammer to deal with black gold. This video will end here.